Every week, Jim, we come back to continuing conversations. I think it can't get better, but today we have the ultimate panel. I have to say there's a lot of excitement going on in the Star Trek Adventures universe right now because of the book that dropped, Utopia Planitia. You teased it a couple months ago, and today, everybody, we're not just talking about Utopia Planitia, but we have the entire batch of writers who worked on it here to get into the nitty-gritty of it, and also to talk about some of the social rumbling we've been hearing, some really cool stuff. So I'm Michael Dismuke. I'm with the Star Trek. I'm Michael Dismuke. I'm with Continuing Missions, which is the #1 blog for Star Trek Adventures RPG. And with us, we have Jim Johnson. Introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Modiphius Entertainment, and your co-host for this year's show. And tonight, I want to say thank you, Michael. You're going to be taking a guest spot tonight, not so much the co-host, but tonight I am pleased and honored to be joined in the hosting booth, as it were, by Modiphius's own very special April Hill. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is April Hill. You can find me at stiletto_assassin on Instagram and stiletto DM on Twitter. And as Jim said, I am the community manager for Modiphius. So if you are chatting on socials and stuff, it's usually me behind the screen, doing all the funny GIFs and clapbacks and whatnot. So I love when you guys tag us. Yeah, yes. But I love when you guys share posts on our social media and sharing your go lives and your reviews of our games and stuff like that. So continue to do that because I love seeing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, thank you, April, very much for being here. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us. You're always welcome anytime, of course. I know your schedule's busy, so just whenever you can make it happen, we'd love to have you. So before we jump into questions for the group, I want to give everybody a chance to introduce yourself, say a little bit about what you do and what you did for the Utopia Planitia book. And just looking at my screen, I'm just going to start over here and go clockwise around. So let's start with Aaron.
No, I'm Aaron Pollyea. I'm generally the science guy and starship guy. So for this, I did I did most of the starships, like 90% of them, let's say, and a lot of talk about the weapons and technology stuff that went in. And I did a little bit of stuff here and there elsewhere across the book, lots of little things.
Lots of little things. Yep, Aaron, you are our go-to for all kinds of little things because you always seem to be so available and so fast with the stuff you do. Like you are like probably like Michael, you're really responsive, but I think Aaron's probably even more responsive than any of us, almost even more responsive than me, because I know all of you go to him directly for stuff, right? Answering questions and stuff. So thank you, Aaron, for all your Johnny on the spotedness.
He's part cetacean too. I'm sure he's part cetacean because he works in sonar also.
I'm always happy to help.
Yeah, awesome. All right, and then clockwise going on from you, John, introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm John Kennedy. I've worked with Modiphius for a way long time now, and I guess we get to claim titles because that seems like a really cool thing to do. I like to do history stuff, so I got to work on Starfleet's origins chapter for this book, and Star Trek's been pretty close to me since I was a little kid, and now I don't really know where I'm going with this, but it's just been great working with everyone.
Awesome, cool. Thank you, John. And then next we've got Thomas. Tell us all about yourself, sir.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Maroney. I'm the Associate Art Director for Star Trek Online. So I actually designed several of the ships that appeared in Star Trek Picard and then were included in the book. And I was invited to come and write the lore and help with pitch the stats, I guess, which were refined by Aaron and the gang for those ships. So so the Odyssey class Pathfinder, all the STO specific ships, which was great to get them into official stats for Star Trek Adventures. And I was also honored to write the forward to the book as well.
Yep. Can we have a fanboy pause, fangirl, fan everything pause for a moment? Because this is like a big bridge to be built between video gaming, TV show, and Star Trek Adventures. So I just want to soak in that moment.
Yeah, and just a personal thank you to Thomas, because like I know we were slowly starting to build that bridge over a bunch of books, like even all the way back with the Alpha Quadrant book and the Gamma Quadrant book. We were dropping in STO starships along with like giveaway codes and that kind of stuff, and we were just kind of like building the foundation. And then I think the Discovery book really opened it up, because you were so generous with some of the artwork that you provided. And even at the last minute, like you became kind of like the Aaron for STO, because you were so responsive finding stuff. Because I would just ask you in passing, oh, we're working on this thing, and I wish I had a .7 graphic to drop in here. And he's like, oh, I've got one of those. And you sent it over, and I was like, oh, okay. We'll use that. Absolutely. We'll use everything we can get. So we've just taken that to the next level with the Starships book. And I mean, I can't tell you folks how many times I got emails from Thomas saying, oh, I've got this, or oh, please don't use this, I have an updated render for this. So it was just a constant stream of fantastic emails that in the back of my project manager mind, I knew was going to elevate this book to a level that we had never seen before in Star Trek Adventures. So I am so excited to have you on the team. So I won't say it often enough, Thomas, but thank you for being part of this. I'm really grateful that you're part of the team. So thank you very much.
It was.
Finally, I'm sorry.
No, it was an honor to be involved, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And then Al, tell us about yourself, sir.
How's it going? Al Spader, freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures. Was super excited about this particular project. I really like looking at narrative possibilities, and I really like streamlining information. So odds are, if there's a table in this book, I probably had something to do with putting it together, and had a lot of fun doing so.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so April, we have a distinguished panelist, a group of panelists in front of us for the Starship, the Utopia Planitia Starfleet Sourcebook. It's a mouthful. And where should we start? Should we ask general questions? Should we kind of open up to the panel? Do you want to ask specific questions to the group? Anything in particular inspire you?
Excuse me. Oh my gosh, I'm still getting over being sick.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It's really up to you guys. And we've got a lot of questions that have rolled through on social that, I mean, some of these have been answered, but of course I always love getting, getting them straight from the source. So, I mean, really it's up to you if we wanted to, start going through the book, or if you want me to fire us questions, really.
Okay, why don't we start off with just kind of some general conversation, and then we'll get into the questions in like the second half or something. I don't know how long we want to go. I don't think we want to be respectful of everybody's time, obviously, but why don't we spend maybe 15-20 minutes talking just about the book individually, and then we can get into the questions. Does that sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. So Michael and I are going to host a series of episodes after this one, going into a chapter by chapter detail about the book. So we're going to really blow it out chapter by chapter. So I don't think I want to really dig too much into the individual chapters, and I don't even think we need to go in order necessarily, right? To say, talk about this chapter, talk about that chapter.
Especially since it's out, but it's not out yet. So
yeah,
you can't give everything away until people get it in their hands.
Yeah, so I know that there's a lot of folks who are waiting for the PDF, which is totally fine. That's your choice. Modiphius historically, or at least in the last couple of years, waits to sell the PDF by itself until after the physical edition ship. That's as the PDF is given as a thank you for pre-order customers. So that's just kind of where we are right now. So not the full collective of Star Trek fans don't have access to the book yet, but maybe this will inspire you to go check it out, think about it, or at least save up your Latinum for when the PDF is available. Then you can pick it up at that point. So I think just let's start. I'll go counterclockwise this time, just for the sake of doing something a little bit different here. So Michael, how about your initial reactions, thoughts about when I approached you and said, okay, we're going to do a Starships book now? What was your initial reaction, initial read on that? What got you hungry for working on it?
Yeah, I was super happy on it. I remember there was a lot of things that we couldn't get into the Game Master's Guide and the Player's Guide. Those are really fun books that I had a chance to work on. And one of the portions that had got cut, it just didn't make sense to add at word count, was the part I did about resource collection, salvage, and retrieval. And already online, people are already asking questions about it and those kind of mechanics. So I was really happy to be able to include that. I was happy to include mission briefs about starships, more stories. I'm more of the storyteller, whereas Aaron's the shipbuilder, and Thomas are the shipbuilder, and Al's the, he can construct, I don't want to say flow charts, tables for everything, and John's the historian. I really love the storytelling. So one of the biggest things I wanted to accomplish with this was, what's it like to live aboard this ship? I'm actually more excited when I watch Star Trek sometimes. Like, what are they doing in the background, and why are they pushing that button? And where's that person in the hallway going? So I kind of wanted to really work on that atmosphere, so that when people are playing Star Trek Adventures, they really think about that downtime and get into the feel of being, life in a spaceship. So when this came out, I was just, when you asked me to work on this, I was like, yes, I can own those parts. And really dig into what life on a starship is like, because I plan to be there one day. I really do.
Yeah, and just anecdotally, having read a lot of the social media on the book so far, I think the sections you wrote on salvage and retrieval and the elements, like searching for the elements, all that kind of stuff, I think that was stuff that a lot of fans weren't expecting to see in this particular book, because like we didn't really advertise it, and it's not really clear. I intentionally didn't put it on the back cover, right, to lay out exactly what it's going to be. I wanted to have a few surprises for folks, and I think that stuff's really well received, because like you were saying, it really adds a lot of texture and detail to the universe and to Starfleet that we don't really see that much on the show. But if you kind of think it through, it's there. So I'm really glad that you wrote those sections, and I'll 100% transparent. I am glad that we had the page count to keep them in, because that in the back of my head when I was working with the graphic designer, that was the first section I thought would probably get the chop if we were over page count, just because it wasn't like purely Starship stuff. It was like tangential to Starship stuff, but it was all relevant. But I'm glad we were able to keep it in for sure. So
when I write, I always think, Jim, every paragraph has to be its own encounter seed. And so everything I was writing there was like, can we actually play it? And funny enough, Al and Aaron playing my Star Trek Adventures game with me, and they didn't know it. I think they now realize it. We tested it out. Remember when you crash landed on that planet looking for rubidium? So that was it. And then it was funny. I was telling anecdotally this to Aaron, is as I was writing it, I'm always thinking about what quotes I can put into whatever section. Mm-hmm. And Voyager was on in the background, and Janeway said, "There's coffee in that nebula," and I was like, "Oh." That's it. I was like,
that's perfect.
Perfect. So it all worked out. I'm glad that quote and the chapter stayed.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. All right, so Al, same question for you. Although I also want to add a nuance to that, where I know that I don't remember if I specifically encouraged you to do this, or if it was just the section that you picked that you wanted to write. But we really wanted to make sure that we talked about the starship as a character. And you really took that section and embraced it and really blew it out into a lot of detail. So I'd love to hear your initial thoughts on like just your reactions to getting to work on the book in general, like just in terms of working on the Starships book, but also a little bit more about that particular section, about what that meant to you to write that section about how important the ship is to a series, but also to an ongoing RPG campaign.
Yeah, I got super excited when I heard that there was going to be a partnership here with Star Trek Online, for sure, because I know that there was a large portion of the community that was interested in that. So I started doing a lot of research there, and then we had this discussion about the ship as a character, and it really shifted my mind to think of this book as kind of like a player's guide for the character that everyone is playing, which is the ship. We see so many different Star Trek shows out there, and almost all of them are named after the ship. It is a main character on the cast. When we did the player's guide, we talked a bit about session zeros and whatnot, and we didn't get super detailed about the part where you determine what your ship is and who your ship is and things like that. Drawing up that section, I wanted to come up with as many different ways or strategies or tools for people to use to make that ship feel like it is an actual character. It doesn't necessarily need to actually, speak to you or talk to you or anything like that. But there are things that could happen on a starship that gives it a little bit of character. And I go to the idiosyncrasies chart table. I've heard a lot of people really excited about that silliness. And I bounced a lot of ideas off of Aaron for that. Because if a ship has been, out in space for 20 years, or even if it's just coming off the line, there's going to be little strange things about it, little quirkiness things about it. I think that will really help telling stories in the future. I was really thinking about, okay, well, for downtime, what do we do on the ship when we're not being the heroes? And we got to see a lot more of this, during the newer Star Trek episodes, but also in the past, we saw people playing games, in the lounges and things like that. So I wanted to kind of put that all together. So I threw a bit in there about that. We talked about the gym and different things. If we have an angry character and they're trying to work out a problem, going to the gym is one way to do that, right? If you have characters who are butting heads on your ship, instead of saying, no, don't do that, find a way to structure it in a way that is beneficial to the story. And you can use the gym in a sparring match or something like that to do that. And we've seen that on science fiction throughout history. That's kind of what I was going for. Trying to go through the thought process of what makes your ship different, what makes it unique, and how is that ship a character?
Could you build a ship like Moira from oh my gosh,
Farscape.
Farscape, yeah. Could you build potentially a sentient ship like that? Is that something?
Yeah, in fact, one of the last steps that we talk about in that little section is your ship sentient? And here are a certain number of ways that, or storylines that could, we're kind of seeing this a little bit in Discovery already, but there are many other ways that a ship could become sentient. So I put a bunch of story seeds in there and ideas on how that could happen. It's not necessarily for everyone, but we wanted those ideas in there for the people that wanted to embrace them.
Or like Mass Effect with Edie. Like, oh, I like that. I like that that you can pull from different fandoms and like bring them into this game and be like, yes, I get to have all my things.
That's one of our biggest things too. We talk, myself and Jim talk about, and we talk with other people about, is it's a sci-fi game. It's in the Star Trek package, but if you like something, again, people ask like, why don't you wear a Star Trek shirt? Here's my Dolly Parton shirt on, right? Because it's a game for everyone, and it's still an RPG where you get to create your own universe. So I love that you asked that, April, because it's like, yeah, if that's what you like about sci-fi, bring it into the game, and Utopia Planitia has that aspect in it now.
I want the Reavers and I want the Borg to fight. Make it happen.
Absolutely.
I'm just kidding. That was awesome. Way out there. Sorry.
All right. Thanks, Al. Appreciate it. All right. So Thomas, I know that we had been talking quite a bit, prior to the Discovery book, and then throughout the Discovery book, and then right into Utopia Planitia. I wanted to get. I know collectively we wanted to get several Star Trek Online ships in there. We wanted to get some of your great art, just some of your other assets, just the other information and stuff that I knew you had available that we wanted to work together on. So just your thoughts about, having finally an opportunity to actually, deliver some significant material to the book, and then maybe a little bit about the forward you had to write too.
Yeah. So, I guess we'll start with the forward, because when we talk about ships as characters, that's something that I feel really strongly about, and certainly our players feel really strongly about, right? When they're making their crew in Star Trek Online, you're not playing Kirk or Picard, you're playing your own Star Trek captain, just like Star Trek Adventures. And so the games are really have a lot in common that way. And the ship, picking out your ship is a very important part of that. And then, a lot of people, they always have like their main ship. It's a collector's game, so you can get a bunch of different starships, but usually people have, this is the ship that I fly and always come back to. And so there's a real connection there, just like Kirk. I mean, it's funny, you watch the original series and you see how Kirk talks about the Enterprise, and even in the Naked Now, he talks about her like, she's his betrothed, almost like he's drunk with the virus. And there's that saying, in vino veritas, right? And so Kirk is just so distressed about the responsibility and obligation he has to the Enterprise, But it's very much like a almost a lover's relationship. And they in the forward, I sort of talk about that a little bit, and then use the recently remastered Star Trek: The Motion Picture sequence where the shuttle pod is flying around the refit Enterprise. And there's an amazing scene where the shuttle pod flips around and Kirk sees the Enterprise from the front for the first time. And I didn't realize this when I wrote the forward, but they actually there's a shot where you see Kirk's face and the Enterprise is reflected in the glass. And I think they added that for the either director's cut or the new 4K remaster. It wasn't the original theatrical cut, but like adding that reflection in the Enterprise and seeing, William Shatner definitely plays it like he's seeing his long lost love. It's a very complex, like, I think, emotion that he's able to convey, and it just speaks volumes about the relationship he has with that ship, and the relationship that I think a lot of people have with their ships and their favorite ships in Star Trek. So that's special to me, and that's one of the reasons. Before I was associate art director on Stowe, I was the lead ship artist, and that's something that I really wanted to bring to the game, was that amount of passion in terms of bringing these ships to life, because that's a really important part of Stowe. That's a really important part of Star Trek to me, for sure. And so, when we talk about the ships in Star Trek Online, I'm really proud of all the work that we've done. We've designed, I don't know exactly the number. I mean, there are hundreds of ships in the game, but we've designed probably almost 100, maybe over 100 now, of like original starship designs that you can only find in the game that were unique to the game. And I've been a part of that process. And so I always want to see other people who, beyond the Star Trek Online players, like get exposed to those designs, because I'm really proud of them. And I feel like they carry the lineage from the 24th century beyond to the 25th century where STO takes place. And thankfully, in season 2 of Star Trek Picard, we got the opportunity to work with Paramount to actually bring Star Trek Online original ships into canon as they appeared in Star Trek Picard season 2. And that was a triumphant moment for the history of the game, but that also made it really easy when we were picking which ships should we include in this book. It's like, well, obviously we're going to pick the ones that that showed up in Picard. And so getting to write the lore for those and suggest the stats and everything was a lot of fun. And some of it I had written for, like, we'd done the Eagle Moss collection of STO ships, and so I've been thinking a lot about the lore of these ships. I like doing that as well. So it was just fun. It's just fun. It's just fun
Thomas,
making
you
ships.
gotta ask. Okay, so all of a sudden you gotta give us the feeling. Let us live vicariously through you.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you find out that the ships that are designed for STO, you're being asked by Paramount that you're going to find out that they're going to be on screen. Please just let us live vicariously through you.
Well, what's really funny about that process is it started out with the production designer in Picard, Dave Blass. He just sort of DM'd me on Twitter. I'd actually posted something about the Eagle Moss work I had done, and he just DM'd me on Twitter and like slowly revealed to me that he was working on Picard season 2. And he's like, hey, I think the ship that you guys made are great. Let's talk about what we can do to work together. And that process was like 2 years of, like, from that initial conversation to actually seeing them in the episode. And it was kind of excruciating, because with budgets and the amount of changes these shows go through from the original script to, like, at one point there was going to be this massive battle between the Starfleet ships and the Borg Doomsday Machine or whatever it's called, and they cut that, right? That didn't end up in the episode. So I for like a year I didn't even want to admit that it was going to happen, because I didn't want to be like the profound disappointment that I would have had to deal with, right, if I had like just got super excited about it. So I didn't actually tell most of the Star Trek Online team, didn't even know until about a week out of the episode airing.
What?
Yeah, because I was just like, I didn't, if they pulled it at the last minute, or like the budget cuts or whatever with effect shots, you never know. So
well, if I ever have a secret to tell, and I don't trust anyone, I'm giving it to
you. So it was incredible. We actually it was a really special moment, because we got the team together. It was one of the first times the SDO team had been together since the pandemic. It was a premiere of Picard episode season 2 episode 1. And we got the company warehouse and all watched together, and then people cheered when the ships came on the screen and everything, and that was super cool. But
Thank you for that story. Thank
yeah,
you. That's
yeah,
exactly what I love.
That's great. And I think I want to harken back to something you said a little earlier about how passionate you are about starships. And it's clear to me, I mean, I knew kind of peripherally that you had a very passionate fan base for Stowe, but I didn't really appreciate it until really the last couple of weeks where, we were getting ready to pre-order the book, and then the pre-order came out, and you also were so gracious to announce it on your blog as well. You gave us that boost, and I really got to be exposed to a whole nother aspect of the Star Trek fandom, who were super passionate about starships and super passionate about the game. And I think this is such an exciting opportunity for us to cross streams a little bit, to get some STO fans familiar with the Star Trek Adventures, and to get Star Trek Adventures folks more familiar with Star Trek Online. Although I know a lot of Star Trek Adventures players have been hungry for a long time to get some sort of STO presence in the game to a greater level than just dropping in artwork. So I'm super excited about this, and I can't thank you enough. I mean, I'll go on about this all day if I have a chance to tell you how grateful I am for all the art that you were able to deliver, and all the insights and all the connections that you have. You're just such a wealth of information, and I'm super happy to have you on the team. So thank you for just being part of this.
Well, thank you so much. That's very nice of you to say. Appreciate that. Into it.
So I can feel your passion, and I'm pretty sure you can feel ours, and it's just a great collaboration. And anecdotally, you probably know already, Thomas, but I've been talking to some of the folks at Paramount, like our review team and our marketing teams at Paramount, and they are always super excited when they hear licensees working with other licensees, where they don't have to ask us to do it; it just happens. They're oh, you're already working with them. That's great. We want more cross pollination and stuff. So this is great. And I hope it continues. And I'm sure we've got some more cool stuff in the future that we can talk about at some point. But yeah, cool. All right, great. Let's jump over to John then. So John, you've been a long time, right? I think you've been with Modiphius longer than I have. I think you were working on stuff before I got on board in 2016. So you've been with Modiphius for a long time. And I know you've worked on a lot of different Star Trek books. I've just been able to find places for you in different pieces here and there. And it just worked out like schedule-wise that you were available to work on the Starships book. So just what were your initial reactions to working on it, getting to do a big section of it, of the history? What were your thoughts there?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say about the book is that while I know that for me, like I love reading about starships, but for me, I wasn't really sure if we wanted a Star Trek book or a starship book. But I've all the people in my gaming group being like, man, I play STO, and then they'll name some class, and they just want it in their game. So this book, when you mentioned it to me, is more like, nah, I'll get the people in my gaming group to be quiet for a minute. So, but I worked on Starfleet's origins and basically approached it from kind of like a history lecture, which hopefully I didn't make it too dry, but at the same time, we're covering 3 centuries and a whole bunch of really interesting parts of the show. But this was a lot of fun to write, like being able to read about Tellarites and Andorians and the original coalition of planets. And I was always kind of a fan of Enterprise. I mean, Enterprise had its low points, but I feel like it was getting really, really good. So for me, just being able to go from Enterprise to to just in the 25th century, it was all great.
Hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. And I wanted to tell you, I really appreciate your willingness to shift midstream, kind of, because I know that as we were working on the manuscript, once I realized, once I kind of wrapped my head around how much content we had to work with, we had originally intended, I guess this is an Easter egg for the fans, we had intended the Starfleet book to actually go out into the 32nd century as well. And so John had written a fairly large section of content for chapter 1 that was all about the 32nd century. And just going through the manuscript, I realized, okay, we need to rejigger this a little bit and save that content maybe for a future Discovery, 32nd century book once season 5 comes out and we get even more material to work with. But so any thoughts on when I had to tell you, and I felt so bad about it because it was such good content that we're going to just have to sit on for a while. But when we had to trim a chunk of that chapter out and then rewrite that last bit to just focus on the 24th and 25th centuries, any reactions there? I'm always appreciative of you, how readily you're able to shift and pivot and still deliver, right? So any thoughts on that?
honestly, it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, no, not my beloved 32nd century chapter. But it was also kind of one of those things too, where it's like, that's a lot of time. That's late 21st, 22nd centuries, all the way up to present timeline. That was a lot. But also means, hey, you've heard it's really good material, folks. So whoever hits us in the future, you might like that book.
Yeah, cool.
That didn't bother me at all. I've been doing this for a long time. So sometimes you didn't tell me the whole draft was junked. So that would have made me very sad. But
you know, everybody froze on me for a second there. I didn't catch your last little bit there, John. I apologize.
did
you guys get it, or was it everybody?
Yeah, we got it. We got it.
Got it.
All right,
That was a nice little zinger at the end.
All right, you know what? Let's keep it there. Then I'll watch it in the video once it's there.
That's great.
He cursed you out, Jim. He cursed you out.
Yeah, I guess so. That's all right. That's all right. Everybody should, if you haven't already. You're probably doing it in private, and that's okay. It's your thing. So then we come to Aaron. So just to set the context a little bit here. So when I first got into the game way back.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, you're having audio on that. We still can't hear you.
Oh no.
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, so back in just a little context. In 2016, when I got into the game, I was starting to work on the core book just as a writer. But in the back of my mind, I was looking at the material, and I saw the direction that Nathan Dowdell had gone with it as a developer, and I was like, oh wow, this is a really cool game with a lot of potential. I hope it gets some legs and sticks around for a while, because I really want to work on a Starships book, like a dedicated Starships book for this. And for a while, I wasn't sure it was going to happen. Like we added a lot of space frames to the command source book. And like, I know, Aaron, you and I worked a lot on that book. That was really the first book that we worked on closely together. And after coming out of that, I was like, yeah, I think we've done most of them. Like, of course, we got a lot of fan responses saying, oh, you missed this one, you missed that one, you missed this one. It's like, well, of course we did. We didn't have the page count. But so in the back of my mind, as I continued to work on books, I thought we would eventually get to do a dedicated Starships book, all things being equal, if we kept the license, if Paramount was happy, all that stuff. And then at some point, I have to say, it was like prior to the pandemic, Aaron, you sent me a lengthy outline proposal for a Starships fleet book that had just a ton of great detail in the outline. And I looked at that and I was like, oh man, I hope we get to do this book or some version of this book. And just we did the Klingon book, then we did Shackleton, and then we did I don't even remember now, something else. Oh, the Tricorder set and some other stuff. But finally, by that point, I got to be project manager for the line, and I was like, okay, we're totally doing this book. And then I came to you and I said, Aaron, I think this is, if there's any book in the line that's your book, right? This is it. And so I would just love to hear, like I was telling the other folks, what were your initial reactions to finally getting the green light to do this thing and getting to work on it? I know, I did the count. You wrote more than half of this book all by your lonesome, right? I know it was a team effort, but the initial drafts coming out of your head was more than half of this book. So just pontificate at will, sir.
Well, okay. So yeah, it was, my initial pitch was March and April of 2019 when I sent it in. And I actually had written a chunk that was actually used almost word for word for the release today, right at the beginning. And I helped out with the section that John was doing with Starfleet's origins. So that pitch from 2019, actually, some of it was verbatim used in this. And I knew that I wanted to really do a book like this. Obviously, I made this big pitch, and even after that, and you said, well, that's not in the books right now, we'll work towards that. I kept writing little chunks of Starship ideas, or here's a little story that I can put in for a famous, Freedom class, or a famous, whatever, a Sydney class. And I kept all those notes together in a little folder that just kept getting larger and larger and larger. And then you came to me and said, okay, we're going to do a Starships book. And I said, no problem. I can do this. And I had when you gave me the broad outline of this is what we needed to do, I probably had about half the starships already done. And that's not including the ones that had already been published. So all I had to do was go back and tweak everything. And I was obviously excited, incredibly excited to do this. And I got all the starships done, and then I wanted to help more because I was so passionate about this. So I kept putting more and more in, or helping other people do whatever I could to increase the importance of this book for gamers that really want to be in the universe. Little details, like with Al's, the starship is a character that is incredibly important to me too. Treat her like a person. Treat her like a lover. They have souls. They have personalities. Even after coming out of the dry dock, they need to have a personality. And I try to infuse that personality into even all the little starship write-ups, not even the notable starships, but just the starship write-ups, to give them a little bit of a personality, a reason for why they're there. So I guess when I heard that this book was going to be made, I said, awesome. I want to make sure that everyone that reads this understands that starships are there for a reason. Every starship is there for a reason, be it for story or background or anything. And I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to kind of experience that flavor.
I have a question as I was reading through these. Not only do you have the starship overview, refit information, but then for each one, I think for every single one, you have a notable starship.
Yeah.
Were those all of your own invention? Are those from canon?
Unless it's a canon ship, obviously there's ones that you can clearly tell are canon ships. There's Enterprise B or whatever. Unless they're canon, they're mine. They're ones that I just kind of came up with. So, or they might be canon and I came up with most of the story for them because there might not be a lot known about it. Beyond that, yeah.
I can't wait in future episodes, Aaron will have you on when we do this chapter, because me and Jim will definitely talk about how people who are new to the game maybe can pick up one of these ships as the new captain with this backstory if they're trying to create backstory. So that'll be really fun.
I think that's what's super cool about having those, exemplar hero versions of the ships is you're just writing tiny little mini adventure stories that people can I wonder what it would have been like to be there, right? And then they can go off and play that adventure, which is super cool.
Or even putting in this is a naming convention for the ships, and then here's some ideas of what ships are named, and then you hear a name and it'll trigger something in your mind and go, Laika. Like Mike said, you named a ship Laika. That's mentioned in there, and I'm like, yeah.
Cry when I hear about that dog.
I that's in there for a reason. At least for me, I put that in there for a reason. But that, if you know history, that should trigger something in you and go, I want to tell a story with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I'm glad that we added to this, I think we unintentionally experimented with this in the Shackleton book, where we had that little sidebar about the runabouts. And we just threw in a reference to, runabouts are usually named for this reason, and the registry numbers are usually in this range. And I threw it in there, and I didn't really think much about it. But the fan response was really good. They were saying, yes, this is the kind of little detail we really want for our role playing games. And I was like, all right. And then I said, Aaron, let's try to include that for all of the ships if we can in the Utopia book, because they really actually we did it in Discovery to some extent, where we had naming conventions, and we also put in registry numbers. I mean, canonically, who knows, right? Paramount doesn't have a list of registries in their database. I mean, actually, they might, but they probably don't. I'd have to ask Mary, and she might have them. But they don't keep a meticulous list of all the registry numbers and ships that they've used, because they don't care. They just make up new ones as they do care, but they just the writers make up new ones as they need to, right? But I think it's such a great little detail. And I remember when I was growing up with the FOSSA books and the especially FOSSA, because the Next Generation Officer's Manual, and if I remember right, the Starship Recognition Manuals had long lists of ship names and registries. It was so easy to geek out over that stuff and be like, it's this ship with this registry, and I can make a sister ship with this registry or whatever. And now we're able to do that with Star Trek Adventures, to where a new group of players can just create their new ship, and it'll still kind of feel like it fits into the class. it's got the same kind of naming conventions, it's got the same range of registry numbers, and it'll feel authentic. And I think that's what a lot of gamers are looking for their campaigns, is just to make their stuff feel like it fits into the universe, even if they're going off doing their own kind of thing. So Aaron, go ahead, April.
But I mean, like what you said, coming up with your own thing and stuff like that, it kind of circles back to also what Thomas was saying about posting stuff that you make on social media that and other people see it and think it's really cool. I mean, social media has become this amazing thing. That's why I'm like, yes, please share your stuff, because not only we might see it, other people might see it, and you make friendships that way, you make connections that way, and you could possibly get hired for doing something that way. So I love that. And I mean, like Aaron was saying, with writing stuff down for years, that he's got ideas in the back of his mind. Do that. Like, if you have an idea, write it down, because eventually, like someday, this opportunity might arise, and then, oh, look, you have a whole freaking book already almost done, just because of these ideas that you've been writing down for years. So I love that.
Yep. And as a basically an acquisitions editor and the project manager of the game, like, I never throw good pitches away. I've got pitches from writers for adventures that I got years ago that I declined for one reason or another, but I've held on to them. I got a record of everything. And every now and then I go back into them and go, oh, maybe it's time for this adventure. And I'll reach out to them and say, remember that thing I canceled on you a while back, or, not canceled, but the thing I passed on? Maybe it's time to bring that back. But, and then, they've always got new stuff too. But yeah, don't ever sleep on your ideas. Don't ever get rid of them. And if you're like me and you forget stuff really fast, write it down and in a place where it backs up in stores so that you can go back and look at it later. Aaron, so I want to tell you, because I don't tell you often enough, but I always want to apologize for all of your great content that I have to cut because you are so verbose and it's such great information. Like, I mean, folks, if you are reading any of the Starship books, like any of the Star Trek books that have starships in them, and you're reading the Starship entries, Aaron does such a great job of putting so much detail into every Starship description. Like, every sentence is almost a plot hook or a story idea or something. And the cruel nature of the business is that when I take a document from Microsoft Word into the layout, into InDesign, by the nature of the beast, stuff has to get cut to trim to fit the layout, or to fit the pagination, or just to fit whatever parameters we've got to deal with. And so, more often than not, I've got to really strategically cut lines, words, sections, bits and pieces out of just stuff in general. Like, everybody's been cut. And it's just the nature of the RPG business, right? But Aaron, I don't know. I feel like sometimes your stuff gets cut more than not, often than not. And I feel so bad because everything I cut is like great stuff. It's like, oh, I want to keep that in because you're talking about, this cool thing that could happen with the warp drive, or you're talking about this thing that could happen with the ship or whatever. And it's like, oh man, someday. I mean, probably can't do it at this point, but I'd love to get all that stuff that we had to cut and do like a special Aaron PDF or something. All the stuff we had to
director's cut.
The lost novellas of this book here.
But, I mean, it's all great stuff. It is so good. And I tell you, I don't. There are times when the editing process takes me longer because I get caught up reading your stuff. It's like, oh, I'd like to run this campaign with this idea, or this campaign with this idea. And it's like, oh, that's a great idea for a ship. And then, like, my writing engine wants to get going. So,
but I apologize for wasting your time or monopolizing it in that way.
Never a waste of time. Never a waste of time.
And there's always continuing missions where you could submit stuff, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Jim. Now I have a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One of taking over.
Sorry. We've been seeing a lot of great feedback on the layout and the design of the pages and the interiors of the book. And could you speak for a minute about where that idea came from and where the blues and the greens came from and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it must have been during the pandemic when we were working on the Klingon book. I guess what was it? It was March when things got really dirty and ugly with the pandemic, right? And the whole world shut down basically. And we went to kind of I don't want to say a tiger team because it sounds so horribly corporate, but like we had to really narrow down the team that was working on the Klingon book. And of course, by that point, it was pretty much done. We were in layout for it, and I was working on that Klingon book, and I was having such a good experience working with the layout team on it because it was such a different layout than what we had done before, right? It was that white background with a lot of the reds and the blacks. And because what we wanted to do is we wanted to get away from the Elcar's design. Obviously, for the Klingon book, we wanted to get away from the Elcar's design. And from there, that really kind of like sparked my brain to like, oh, we could get really more creative with the layouts that we've been doing for the books. You know, we started to develop an Enterprise layout, and then we changed up the color palette for Shackleton to make it feel a little different. We changed the color palette for the Delta Quadrant book, and I was like, okay, well, let's take it to the next level. Let's continue to evolve the game. And by the time we did, actually it was Shackleton, I think. By the time we did Shackleton, I was like, okay, we really need to do some different layouts here. And I knew we had the player guide and the game master guide coming up that I really wanted to have them look different and more kind of like Universal Trek because they weren't focused on one particular era or setting. And then I knew we had the Discovery book coming up after that. And I knew Discovery, I wanted to do a very different look and feel for that to have it fit the Discovery season 1 and 2 kind of, design aspect that we saw on screen. And then I started really thinking, because about that time we were talking about doing the Starships book. And I was like, okay, if we're going to do a Starships book, we really need to tap into an era we haven't really touched yet. And that would be the movie era. We need to find a way to bridge the original series to next gen. And so I talked to the graphics design folks and I said, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to do a new fresh layout for the Starships, like a layout design for the Starships book. And I want it to be something in between original series and next gen, right? Something between there. It's got to be a white background, dark text on white background, because I personally love the Elcar's design, but it's horrible for print, in my opinion, because it's so hard.
So hard for
like
people with astigmatism.
Yeah, my eyes.
It's actually really, really hard.
Yeah, my eyes are getting old, and it's really hard to read in print. Like I love it on screen because it just looks like a next gen pad kind of thing. But for readability, I really wanted something a little cleaner. And I was like, so I went to Mihao, one of our lead, or actually I think the lead graphic designer at Modiphius, and I was like, okay, look, let's do something really movie era ish. And I got lucky. I just happened to find a movie era sticker book on eBay that had all the motion picture era graphics that were used in the movie in the book. And I was like, shoot, I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to scan it in. And then I sent all those scans over to Mihao and said, look, this is kind of the design idea. And we trawled the internet, and like shockingly, the internet doesn't have as many screenshots as you would think it should have. Because I would think a 30-year-old movie, there'd be screenshots all over the place. But like for the specific stuff we were looking for like monitor designs and signage and that kind of stuff, there's just not really a lot of shots of that. And I was like, shoot, what are we going to do? And so we just kept digging. And fortunately, Mihao really knows what he's doing, which is a godsend. And he sent me some initial drafts, and I was like, wow, this is like 90% there. And he had the blues and the greens because he used. We focused really on Star Trek V and Star Trek VI because that's where the really sharp colors were coming out on the monitors. And we had the Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise. We had a couple other references, and I think it might have been was it trekcore.com, or there's a couple of websites that had just a ton of screenshots from all the movies, right? And he and I went through the screenshots. And we were like, well, here's a Master Systems display in the background. Let's use that. And he found all these great monitor shots, and he was able to pull the blues and the greens out of there. And then just because this is what he does, right? Because he's a graphic artist and he has that design mind, he was able to pull all those colors and those graphics out and translate it into a layout that would feel very Star Trek, feel very movie era, feel very Utopia Planitia-y, and made it work. And then we sent that off to Paramount for approval, and they were like, "Yep, that's perfect." Not perfect. Nothing's perfect, but it was good enough, right, for what we wanted to do. And then Lee, we've had Lee Woozy on a couple of times on the show, and I'm sure we'll have him on again. He took that overall design, look and feel, and turned it into the book, right? You have to make certain tweaks to it once you've got the full manuscript in hand. And I'm sure we'll talk to Lee at more extent, but like he's such a Star Trek fan. He added so much more detail to it, like all the little plant-in graphics, all the little greebly bits, all the numbers, just all that stuff. Even the end papers, like Lee was completely responsible for the end papers, which I thought were great. And again, that's another tribute to Thomas and his team at Stowe for providing so much of that artwork that we were able to actually put those end papers out with the ships scaled to, kind of scaled to each other. Some of those scales are not, canonical, of course, because for the most part, Paramount's not going to, tell you exactly what they are because the writer might decide something different. But the fact that we were able to pull all that together, because I told Lee at the very beginning of the layout that I would love to have some sort of thing in the end papers that shows you relatively how big the ships are compared to each other. I didn't really know exactly what it looked like. I just thought like a ship comparison thing would be cool. And he was able to do it in the 2 end papers, which I thought was great because I really wanted to get away from the maps in the end papers that we've been doing since the beginning of the line, right? I don't know about the fans, but I'm sick of looking at maps. I wanted to see something different.
Is there any way we can get a PDF of those put together so that, I think about those old Marvel Universe covers where you could line them all up, or even like the Command Division books, Division books.
Yeah.
I would love if we could get that into one.
That'd be cool. I could ask Lee when he's not busy. He's got a million projects on his plate right now because he's so busy with Modiphius stuff. But I can certainly ask at some point. Maybe we can do that.
I want that as my screensaver. So
yeah. But anyway, a long story short, it was totally wanting to touch the movie era that we haven't really gotten to yet, because I know a lot of fans love the movie era and the Monster Marine uniforms, and then just that whole aesthetic that the 2280s, 2290s into the lost era, right? The quote unquote lost era that we still haven't seen much of yet. I really wanted to tap into that and take advantage of it because there's products that I would like to do themed around the movie era. And now we have the perfect opportunity because now we've got the layout. Now I can use it for mission briefs and other stuff. So hopefully we'll see more of that in the future. But yeah, great question. I hope that answers it. Appreciate it. If not, ask something else. So with all that, so thanks for all that great stuff. That's a ton of content, and I really appreciate it. I guess we want to go a little further. So April, you said you had some questions that you wanted to throw out there from the fans that we have.
Well, yeah. One person said that when's the Klingon ship book? It's like you gave us a Klingon book. Now we want, and you have the starships books. Now we want a Klingon ships book. Like,
yeah. I think my answer to that would be twofold. One, we kind of already have a Klingon book because we put so much content into the Klingon core book. I think if you have the Klingon core book and Utopia Planitia, you could probably use the construction kit that's in Utopia Planitia, because actually, Aaron and the team, they actually wrote that construction kit to be not just Starfleet, right? It's Federation, it's Starfleet. We reference the Romulans, the Klingons, the Andorians, etc. So I think you could probably use that. The space frame construction rules that we have in Utopia Planitia, you could probably use that for any polity. And you already have a leg up because the Klingon book has so many space frames in it already. Between the Klingon core book and the Discovery book, right? Because we added another bunch of Klingon space frames into that too. So it won't all be in one handy dandy place like Utopia Planitia, but I think all the content's out there that you need. And I think the boring answer is that financially and concept wise, there's no way a Klingon book would ever sell comparatively to Utopia Planitia. So I couldn't possibly get that through the approvals process. And not from Paramount, but from Modiphius. I just don't think there's enough of a market there to make a dedicated Klingon book, Starships book work. But good question.
Yeah, you touched earlier. There was y'all were talking about a little bit of like gathering resources and stuff like that, like something like almost Easter egg-ish that is in the book, but you didn't say was in the book. So like leading off of that, what are everyone's favorite like Easter egg that is in the book? Because I know we put those in there. So I'm curious what's everyone's favorite little, oh, did you know that's in there? If you don't mind us giving those little secrets away.
We do it all the time. You pick who goes first. I think we all have them.
First I'm going to preface it by saying I don't even catch all of them sometimes, right? I am confident that every one of you put in Easter eggs into this book that I completely missed because I'm in the haze of editing. Like I'm just trying to get it done. And like, oh, that's a really cool reference, but I may not catch exactly where it's from. So I'm sure there's Easter eggs throughout it, but I'll go clockwise this time and we'll just get everybody's initial reads on this. Aaron, what's your favorite Easter egg?
I put a lot in, I'll be honest. And most of them are fun, but I think I can't say my favorite, but I think it's the most important one is right in the beginning of the book. And it's the green box high in the sky transmission from Dr. Juliet Novak from New Berlin base. The story behind that is that I met a girl in high school when I was going to a play at a different high school, and her name was Julie Novak. And we met because we were both wearing Star Trek shirts. And I got to be good friends with her. She graduated her high school a year ahead of me and went to Michigan State University. And I decided I was going to go to Michigan State University. I told her, hey, I'm coming up. Can I stay with you for a few days while I look for a job? And she's like, no problem. So I go up, stay. I meet my future wife going to a party with her. And she comes to our wedding. She is great friends with both my wife and I. And she died in a horse riding accident in 2004. She was thrown from a horse and broke her neck. And she loved Star Trek, and she was a force of nature, and we miss her every day. And I thought it would be amazing if I could actually put her in this book as a person that is crying out for peace and the stop of war on Earth, and that she somehow in Star Trek lived to go to the moon. So that's my Easter egg. It wouldn't be known to anybody except unless I explained it like this. But it's not funny. It's just important to me.
That's deep. That's what Star Trek's about. It's immortal. That's so cool.
Yeah, that's powerful, Aaron.
Sorry for bringing everything down a bit.
No, that's really cool. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Beautiful.
Yeah. John, not to put you on the spot to follow up from that, but I mean, that's such a great story. But any Easter eggs that you are particularly fond of?
There's a section in my chapter where it's between a Federation ambassador and the Klingon magistrate. And they were talking about the USS Grissom when it was destroyed and being able to show what Klingon political justice, would have been like there then.
Just so you know, I was cracking up out loud as I was reading that. I'm so glad that you wrote that, John.
It struck me as what the Klingons would do, where the Klingons would be like, yeah, our bad. We blew up your science vessel. Okay, we're going to carry out the law, but we don't actually care. and I'm glad that came through. So
nice.
I was worried most people would, because Star Trek 3's kind of got like that reputation, but I weirdly like it. So
I love Star Trek 3. Who doesn't?
Yeah, it's solid. Yeah. All right, Thomas, what's your highlight for Easter eggs in the book?
Yeah, so I think the main one is the USS Ross, which is the Ross class starship, which we designed for a Star Trek Adventures game. So probably a lot of your viewers are also familiar with the Clear Skies actual play campaign by the Streampunks, and they approached me back in, I guess it would have been 2019. They were starting a new Star Trek Adventures campaign, and they wanted a ship for the game, and it sort of worked out that I also needed to design a new ship for Star Trek Online, and the needs sort of met up of the type of ship they wanted versus the type of ship that I had to do. And so we kind of collaborated on what that was going to be, and ended up with the Ross, which is like an advanced Galaxy class derivative design inspired by the Galaxy class, but brought to the late 24th century technology. And then there was an opportunity to bring the Ross into Picard as one of our most detailed ship models. So when I was working with Dave Blast to actually canonize some STO ships, I picked the Ross as one of them because it was the perfect time period for Picard, and it was one of our better looking models fidelity wise. And so we ship that off to them. And so it's cool that the ship that was originally designed for a Star Trek Adventures campaign then became canon in Star Trek Picard, and now is back officially in a Star Trek Adventures book.
Wow.
So it's kind of gone full circle.
That's pretty cool. Very awesome. I love it. Al, what's your highlight?
So one of the things that I really like when we get to do this type of stuff is to just pour through like reference books, and I really like looking at the old role-playing games, the Last Unicorn and the Decipher books specifically, and I got to have some fun with that in the downtime section when creating the tables for types of games that can be played, or for types of martial arts that there are. So in the martial arts random table, there are a couple of martial arts that are specifically from the last Unicorn games. The Among the Clans Andorian book, and one from their Romulan box set that I wanted to put in there just kind of as a tip of the hat of those that came before us. We also did a couple of those in the talents as well that we found from Decipher that we thought would work well in Star Trek Adventures as well. So just, a lot of people have brought Star Trek to the role playing throughout history, and I think it's good to give them a nod here and there when they create something cool.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Michael, what's your favorite Easter egg that you dropped into the or that you saw? It doesn't have to be one that you wrote. It could just be whatever your favorite one is.
I'll do one that I wrote. I'm a diehard animated series fan. In fact, I dream that the style of the animated series would come back full force on like a Nick at Night kind of cartoon thing. So I don't know if anyone ever caught it, but there's an old episode called Mud's Passion where they have love crystals. And so in the resource section, I put Nurse Chapel's, Lieutenant Chapel's after action report to Dr. Ahava Esmi. And if I remember correctly, I looked up in Arabic the word love, and I think it's Arabic, both the words Ahava and Esmi are forms of the word love. So I thought that would be kind of funny to put in there. But so she has to report to Starfleet Medical what happened and report about the love crystals. And if you remember the cartoon, she had fallen in love with Spock, and that turned really badly at the ending. Really funny episode. And of course, mud. So it's a great episode. So I just put that in there. I dug deep and thought I would use that as an Easter egg. And then the other one was on, I just like grabbing the most obscure quotes I can find. And I was able to actually reference Star Trek V, where why does God need a ship? And, being able to quote God, was really cool as a quotation from Star Trek. Like God has a quote in Star Trek. Those are two things I really enjoyed. Nice.
Very nice. And then for my part, just to close it out, closing the circle here as far as the Easter eggs. There's a lot of Easter eggs that I drop in from time to time because, just frankly, this is no surprise. I work on these books really late at night sometimes. I got a day job, I got a family, usual array of excuses, just like everyone has. And so, sometimes I'll be up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, going through the edits and just cleaning up the manuscript, tidying it up, putting it into order and stuff. And sometimes just something will strike me. It's like, oh, that's an appropriate place to put in a little Easter egg. Or even working with Lee on the layout, I was like, you've got this little graphic right here. If you just make this one little tweak, it turns into a Easter egg for the Fifth Element. And of course, it probably went right over Lee's head, but I was like, we're going to put it in there. So there's an Easter egg to the Fifth Element in there. And then, like what you were saying, Al, hearkening back to the shoulders of giants that we're standing on, all the folks that came before us in the RPG in the world, FASA, Last Unicorn Games, Decipher. I got all the books on my shelf right here next to my workstation, and I'm always looking at those for inspiration and ideas, just to remember where we were 30, 40 years ago and where we are now. And there was an opportunity, again, partly based on the layout drafts that I was getting from Lee. I was like, well, you got this, this ship here. Why don't you tweak it and just change the name to this? And now we've got an immediate Easter egg to FASA or to Last Unicorn Games or whatever. And so it's a blended approach where I'm taking his stuff that he's creating for inspiration and then just putting a tweak onto it and turning it into an Easter egg that hopefully the fans will find and love. And then other than that, sometimes I drop in stuff from my campaigns and from my life, and I'm not going to tell anybody about them because they're for me, right? That's okay. It's like I'm sure you all do it too, right? There's a lot of stuff in here. Like Aaron, you shared that very personal story, and if you hadn't told anybody, nobody would know, but and that's what's important. So we're just bringing. Hopefully, it's clear that we're all bringing a lot of love and passion to the project and to the line, and so grateful that we're able to cross over into the Stowe universe now, because I can see how passionate they are. And Thomas, when we have you back on to talk about Chapter 4 and your ships, I really want to get into the weeds on the story about some of the ships that you wrote, because I've been seeing conversations on social media that I wasn't expecting, as fans are super excited about certain ships getting into the book, and I'm like, oh, this is an interesting story here.
I want to say too, there's a lot of questions coming in about ships that so people who are watching this, if we don't get to the questions now about the specifics about the ships, We're
Okay.
collecting them, and we'll make sure to talk about them in that episode.
Okay. Yeah, and Michael, I'll defer to you. Like April, I'm sure you've got a couple more questions, but I think we've been at this for an hour now. Do we want to go a little further? Like, I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. So if anyone needs to drop, by all means, we can close it up here. Or if April, if we've got a few more questions, let's field a couple more, and then Michael, maybe save your bigger questions, and maybe we can divide them up chapter by chapter. I mean, we're going to be talking about this book for a while. It was a lot of work, and I think the fans clearly are excited about it. So I think we'll continue to offer insights for it.
Heck, we're excited for it.
Yeah.
I hope so.
One thing I did want to say really quick, you guys were talking about the other, the previous Star Trek RPGs. I actually worked with Jesse Heinig, who was a designer at Decipher Games, and worked on the Star Trek RPG there. And so it's cool that he's, now he's working on Star Trek Online too. So that's
very cool.
Can I ask, how big is the staff at Star Trek Online working on it?
It's about depending on who you count, because there's our marketing team, and they're all kind of on our publisher side, but it's around 30 or 40 people.
Wow, very cool. So April, did you have any other questions from the fan base?
I actually, it was just a little like bit of information and what your thoughts are, like all y'all's thoughts are. So, as you know, we have like the covers of the books, we've got the 3 different covers, the 2 collector's editions. Some people are now they want a bundle to where they can get all 3 covers, and it's the same content on the inside, but the beautiful outsides are different. Yeah. So they're like, can we get a bundle with all 3? So I did a poll, and on Instagram, the original cover, not the collectors, won by 40. They had 45% of the vote, but on Twitter, which had 131 votes, so a lot of people were voting on there. The Next Generation cover won by 42. They had 42% of the vote. So I'm just curious what y'all like think of the collector's edition covers, and like what. So why did we do the TOS and the TNG like as the collector's edition covers? Like, I'm just curious, like how that process and thought and everything came to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
I think we knew. Well, we didn't know. We don't know. Nobody knows nothing in the RPG business. But I think we had a reasonable expectation that the Starships book would probably be popular, right? And we wanted to do something special about it, because we knew starships, like starships are characters. They're a big deal. They're a big part of the franchise. Like you were saying, or I apologize, I don't remember exactly who said it, but somebody on this panel a little while ago said that like pretty much every show is named after a ship, right? It's an Enterprise, Voyager, DS9, Prodigy, or not Prodigy, but anyway. So ships, super important. And we knew this would be a popular book if we got it right. And we wanted to do something special with the collector's editions. Modiphius has been experimenting over the last couple of years with doing collector's editions for their different lines, for their books, just to see, I mean, really, honestly, it's all testing to see, is there a market for this? Is there, like, we know there's markets for the games, but is there a market for like the upscale stuff? Like, do people want fancy covers on what's essentially the same interior? And I mean, clearly the answer is yes, because all of our collector's editions have been selling really well for Star Trek and for the other lines, right? Like Dune's got some amazing, like I'm super jealous of the Dune collector's covers because they're so amazing. And like,
these are so amazing too, though. These look
I'm
really
trying.
beautiful.
I'm working on it.
But yeah, Dune has some pretty covers. But these, when I saw these, I was like, oh, people are going to lose their minds.
Yeah, that's the hope. Because I thought the Klingon book came out really good. The collector's book with the red leather and the debossed symbol. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is just scratching the surface of what's possible. What could we really do with it? And then so we did the Discovery book, and the Discovery collector's book came out amazing with the gold foil and the silver foil. And I was like, and Stephanie Toro at Modiphius, she designed that for us. And I went back to her. I made sure that she had room in her schedule to work on the Utopia book. I was like, okay, we're coming back to you because we love your work. But now, having talked to the management team, and we wanted to I convinced them to do 2 covers instead of just one, because I said, this is a perfect opportunity. We've been talking about doing A/B testing for a while now. Which one's more popular, original series or next gen? And which one? Because we've had a very vocal fan base who wants nothing but TOS stuff. They're TOS fans to the core. That's all they want. They won't even look at something if it doesn't look like TOS. And of course, we gave them the tricorder, the tricorder collector set, which was a big piece of that. But I was like, okay, if we've got the budget to do 2 covers, let's do original series, let's do next gen, head to head. Let's see what happens. Just we'll publish a limited number of both of them because we've only got so much budget. And the reality is that we're in a business. This isn't the 24th century, right? Where we can have a moneyless society. We have to do it somehow. We have to pay for this stuff. So I was like, okay, so Stephanie got that notice that we were going to do 2 covers. I wanted them to be kind of samey, so that they're of a theme. And then I just cut her loose and said, okay, come up with some cool designs. And obviously I gave her an art brief and some parameters and stuff. And we went through a number of iterations with the art director, Ariel, and Stephanie and I, and we came upon a couple options, and we just were refining. And that's what we ended up with, were the blue one for next gen and the gray one for original series. And I think they look spectacular. And what the challenge is, though, is that we haven't seen them in physical version yet, but we only see the renders and what Stephanie put together in terms of the foiling and stuff. And when I was picking out the materials, like for the leatherette and for the foiling, like I had pictures of the materials, right? So everything is kind of based off of a picture. But I do have, the past history of the Discovery book and the Klingon book in hand. So I kind of have a sense of what it's going to look like, but I really trusted the team. I trusted Pete in production, and I trusted Stephanie that they know what they're doing, and that the pictures they're showing me of the materials is going to look good when it all comes together. But I'm just excited to see what they come up with, because that blue like foil, reflective foil that's on the both of them, actually, the Galaxy class and the Constitution class, I think is going to look pretty sweet in the leatherette, but we'll see. And I'm going to stop talking because I want everybody else to react to them too, because I could just go on all day about the collector's cover. So I'll stop.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go. April, so far it sounds like from your poll, it's about 50-50 though, and people desiring the cover between both polls.
It was different. It was different. And I've noticed this with other polls that we do. Instagram people are and I wanted to do one on Facebook too, but it wouldn't let me do it the way I wanted to do it. But Instagram and Twitter, people, I don't know. It's always different. It's always hardly ever do I see polls line up. So I just thought it was very interesting to see like 46% over here for the original cover, and then the 42% over here. It was very different. So
Thomas, can I ask about STO? Do they skew, like the ships that people are picking? Do they skew like 50% TOS, 50% TNG with the players? Is there any kind of data on that?
We have data, so it's a little tricky because we have data on who. Well, first of all, you can get a ship with a certain stats, but that ship with those stats might be able to use 5 or 6 different visual options on it, right? So, like, you could have a Constitution class that looks like the one from the motion picture, or it could look like the one from the original series. You can have the Galaxy class that looks like from the TNG ship, or you can make your Galaxy class look like the Ross or whatever. So we know the from the statistics point of view what types of ships people like, but we don't necessarily know which visual variants are popular. Typically what we find though is, if we make Starfleet ships are the most popular by far, people just, they'll never get enough saucer in the cells. And that's really just what it boils down to. And Enterprises, anything that's canon is very popular. Anything that is canon and a hero ship is by far the most popular. But I would say that we just actually added the Stargazer from Star Trek Picard, and that has done really well. But I would say the Stargazer has had a much better reception than the La Sirena did, for example, because the Stargazer is a much more traditional Star Trek ship. And that's really what that's the fantasy that they have.
I love that. I love data. I love questions like that.
Mhm. Same.
Good. I'm glad you ran that poll, April. Keep running more.
I think one more thing to point out, Michael, is that this book is, I think that somebody could know nothing about role playing, pick up this book and enjoy every second of it, right? Like like I know that we're marketing it as, it's an RPG game, right, for Star Trek Adventures, but I think any Star Trek fan that saw like these holofoil covers with the kind of technical manual throwback look to them could pick them up and say, oh, this is about ships, just like what I was reading 30 years ago. So I think that it's a very clever design in both cases. Because
my greasy fingered little 5-year-old nephew saw me looking at it and tried to touch it. I wouldn't let him, but
Can I say something about that really quick? Because I think it's an important point. It's something that that you don't get to do a lot anymore. Back in I feel like back, not to get too nostalgic, but back growing up in like the 90s, kind of the heyday of Star Trek, when you could go to a bookstore and you didn't know you didn't really have the internet, so you didn't know that there was like a new Star Trek technical manual coming out, and you're just walking around at Borders or whatever the bookstore was that you went to, like, holy crap, there's a new Star Trek book. Holy crap, it's a technical manual. Holy crap, there's all this like cool new information about the Enterprise that I had no idea existed. Right? There's that like feeling of discovery, of learning new things about the universe from an in-universe perspective that is really special to fans like who are really into that kind of thing. I remember that feeling and how special it was to me every time I encountered and discovered something like that. And there's a lot like that in this book, of like nuggets of discovery that you're going to get from that you just haven't seen anywhere else, because we made it for this book, and that's what this book is about. And I think that's really great.
Wow, Thomas, I can't believe I love the fact that you mentioned that, because it's funny how you don't know what's going to trigger memories, right?
Mm-hmm.
But literally, just you talking about that reminded me way back in the day. I mean, this must have been 90, 91, 92. I was working at Walden Books at the time, and this was back before the internet, right? I mean, we had CompuServe, I think, right? It was the only way we got news about science fiction and fantasy was through Starlog, really. Like Starlog magazine, maybe Entertainment Weekly. I don't know if Entertainment Weekly had started coming out yet. I'd have to go back and find out how long they've been around. But like Starlog was it, right? That was your primary source for, or the Star Trek official fan club magazine, right? But I was in the stock room one day, just opening boxes, getting stuff out, and getting ready to put on the shelf. And literally, I opened up a box, and there was like 20 copies of the Next Gen Technical Manual, the one that Okuda and Sternbuck wrote. And I was like, I stood there in shock. I was like, what is this? Where did this come from? This is like heaven just dropped this box on me. I was like,
did you get any work done that day?
No, because my two of my coworkers and I, we were actually playing a homebrew Star Trek RPG because we didn't like the FOSSA system the way we wanted to run it. So we took the FOSSA system as kind of a base for our game, and then we just made up our own rules around it. But we were actually playing a Star Trek RPG at the time, and then that technical manual came out, and we were like, oh, this is going to change everything, because I think Next Gen was on the air. I think it was in its 3rd or 4th season. Yeah, DS9 hadn't even come out yet. Like we had heard rumblings about DS9, but boy, that book when it came out was like, holy cow, that just changed our world completely. And so thank you for sparking that memory. Really
Jim and I suspect the quality of these books. I will say this, and then we're going to, we're almost at this for an hour and a half now. Yeah. We're going to be talking about it. So we're going to get to a wrap up. But what I will say is Jim and myself have this dream. We've talked about it, and we believe it, that when writers of Star Trek are going at it now and looking for source material, that these books are good enough to be source material with their technicality. And with the Discovery book, we know actually one of the writers for Discovery helped do input on the Discovery STA book too. So Thomas, between your talk about crossover and then knowing that you've seen the full rotation now that you're part of the adventures too, Star Trek Adventures, that I tell people if they really want to get to know the universe or even write about the universe, these are the books to go to right now. For the most comprehensive details you can get. In this case, Utopia Planitia, about the ships. Right, Jim? Anything else?
Absolutely. No, good for me. I just wanted to see, just to give everybody an opportunity. Aaron and John, any Any reactions to the collector's covers? Any thoughts there?
I loved them. I mean, they immediately made me think of the cover of the Star Trek Next Generation technical manual in a weird connective way. I love them. What else can I say?
I remember when because I've been around since the beginning of the line, and I remember just the debate over like, do we go with TOS or Next Generation? And I'm like super curious to figure out like where the numbers are going to fall, because like I'm more next gen, and yeah, it's just it's I love how Star Trek is so big now that it's just you have the people who love original series, the people who love Next Generation, the people who identify strongly with one or two or more series, and I don't know, for me, it's just really great to just see all that passion.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's totally malleable now. Even the time, the ships start, the timeline starts so far back and then goes up to the 25th century now. So, and we know, hopefully we get into the 32nd century at some point too.
Yeah.
All right. So again, we could talk about this all day, which is why we call this continuing conversations, but we'd like to go out with shout outs. You can shout out whatever you like, whatever inspires you. It could be something even from the past or whatever. Today, I'm going to shout out Games in Berkeley, which is a shop here in the Bay Area that I know carries this STA line. And we always love shouting out our brick and mortar stores, because that's where you have those experiences like Thomas, where you walk by something and you see it, and we get new fans that way. So that's great. Let's go around. Let's go to Aaron. Who do you want to do a shout out for?
Oh, Schuler Books. They're a local bookstore here in Lansing and Grand Rapids, and I absolutely adore them. Just having a local bookstore is always a fantastic thing.
Definitely. Good. Al, what about you?
I'm going to actually shout out all the writers who have worked on Star Trek role-playing games in the past. Thank you so much for the wealth of information that you've provided to help us make this game as in-depth as we possibly can.
Beautiful. Great shout out. John, what about you?
It's funny we mentioned those books, and the Andorian book was one of my favorites of the old Trek books. I want to give a shout out to Game Preserve South, where it's my local gaming club. And whenever one of my books comes in, the manager always calls me to let me know. Which makes me just smile greatly. And I love that they're I love that they carry the books and they really encourage a fun atmosphere.
What it's about. Have a good time, right? I always say, the world can be so depressing. This is our escapism where we get feel-good moments playing RPG. Thomas, what about you? Who do you want to shout out?
I will shout out another game store that's also in the Bay Area, Game Castle. They've got a lot of different stores all over the place. I usually go to the Santa Clara one near the airport, but yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Fremont. I go to the Fremont one.
Oh, nice.
In that area. Sweet. Great store, by the way. I like them because they're always willing to host games. And even if you're a comic writer or any kind of gamer, they're always willing to host your product. They're so nice. I love the staff over at Game Castle. All right, April, you did a great job co-hosting with us today. Who do you want to shout out?
I know this is going to be very on the nose obvious for me being the community manager, but honestly, I would like to shout out all of the people that stream our games, and not even just stream, just play our games and have a passion about this, that support us and, buy our products and stuff like that. Because just from talks like this, you can see that so much love and passion, goes into these things. Obviously you all really enjoy what you do and you really enjoy Star Trek, and it shines through to the products. And so I'm really appreciative that the fans see that and they love this game so much that they are streaming it. So yeah, every time somebody streams it, I want to see it. I want to pop into your stream. I want to see you playing it, because I'm a gamer, and gaming is beautiful, especially when it's themed around something that you love, like Star Trek. So show me more of those. Tag us in your tag Modiphius on socials in your live streams, because I want to see more of them.
Great shout out. All right, Jim, you wrap it up for us. What's your shout out?
Yeah, especially because you never know who's going to drop in on those Twitches and those streams. You never know who's watching. Could be one of us. Oh gosh,
all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many people I want to shout out to, but I think we'll talk about this more in the future episodes. But like everybody, because this is specifically about Utopia Planitia and starships, like everybody from the very beginning, way back in '66, who were designing starships, coming up with the initial ideas for the starships, putting the designs together, getting the Enterprise together, moving on up into the movies, into all the different series, like all those designers, all those craftspeople who created the physical models and then, evolved into the CGI models and stuff. That is such a wealth of inspiration for the show. And for me personally, like I was a Starships nerd all my life. And like, I knew the names, like, Andy Probert, Rick Sternbach, Michael Kuda, and even the newer generation of folks that I see on Twitter all the time. And was able to reach out to some of them, right? Like, Mark Rademacher and Bill Krause and, even Thomas and some other folks. And there's just so many, but like the ships are at the heart of Star Trek. The ships and the stations are at the heart of Star Trek. And like, you can put Kirk up. Of course, people recognize Kirk, but you put the Enterprise up and they recognize it just as much, right? I mean, the Starship, you got to have it. It's all hand in hand. And so like literally everybody who was involved in creating starships or space stations or shuttlecraft or whatever to get on the screen in one format or another, thank you, because we are grateful for all the work that you did. And I hope we did you proud with this book, because it's a tribute to all your hard work. Like all this stuff is a tribute to you. So thank you for all that. And I'll echo April, of course, to say that we have the best fans that I can imagine. They are so passionate and so supportive, and they've been super generous with their emails about the corrections to make. And I'm grateful that, like, initially I was like, oh gosh, as soon as we send out a new book, I get the emails. The typos.
They want to be a part of the project.
They want to be part of it. Yes, I understand that now. They want to be part of it, and they want to make it as good as they possibly can make it, because we do too. So yeah, thank you for the emails. Keep them coming all the time. Keep talking about the book. Go check out STO, because now we have an opportunity to get you into STO, and STO fans get into the STA, because it's cool. It's a different way to create your own ship and your own game. Mm-hmm. So try both and see which one you like, and try them both out anyway.
Yeah, and something just struck me as we go out and we warp out of here. Basically, we're looking here at the Starfleet Corps of Engineers when it comes to the Utopia Planitia Star Trek Adventures book. So I think that's kind of cool. The engineers were all in the house today. Yeah. All right, well, that's it. As everyone knows, IDIC. And
go ahead.
Yep. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper. Be safe. Well, we'll see you all next time.
Bye. Bye-bye.